Great. Thank you so much for hanging out and chatting with us.
Thanks, Jillian. I'm enjoying your fancy lodge event so far.
We are in Montana currently at a retreat. So we're hanging out in a cool Montana-ish kind of house. Was there any inspiration points growing up or as a young adult that kind of helped create this idea that maybe there's a different path to happiness versus just, I have to buy the most stuff and I have to spend the most money? What was kind of that initial inspiration that made you think, maybe there's a different way to do this, different way to optimize it?
Oh, well, for me, I came in as like in a naive perspective because I didn't even know there was another way. So I'm an immigrant. I'm from Canada, and growing up in Canada in the 70s and 80s in like a frugal family in a town. I had to live in a town of 3,000 people. So there wasn't a lot of wealth around to really set the bar high. So I thought I was living an incredibly fancy life. Just the fact that I could have like, a car and a bicycle and a nice, whatever I wanted, I could have. Like I had good tools, good music stuff because of my passions in life. Yeah. And then I didn't even realize what I wasn't buying until I saw other friends. I'm like, oh, wow, you can buy that. That's weird. That sounds expensive. And I think if I'd grown up in like a wealthy family in Southern California and everybody's got the glitzy lifestyle, I would have been programmed as a child to think that was normal. And then I might have had a more difficult time peeling back to an affordable life, which is cool. So now I'm trying to have my own son have this perspective as well of like more of a middle, like, a lower level of luxury and spending, which is still incredibly nice and luxurious by any objective standard. But we never grew up with fancy cars for him. And he understands that he's not going to get a bunch of stuff given to him just for no reason. He is welcome to go earn it himself. And that's like a reward, is being able to earn things, earn your own living. Like I didn't get any money from my parents and I had to pay for my own school. And I felt that was, I thought that was normal. So I didn't resent them for it. But now in retrospect, I realized that was a gift as well, is that I got to do these things myself, worked a lot of minimum wage jobs through high school to save up years in advance for college tuition. And then I appreciated everything really, really a lot as it came to me over the years.
What would you say, like when you think back on your childhood, what were kind of for you those little moments that were the richest or the most enjoyable, or that you just felt like the most alive as a kid?
Well, like a lot of people, I remember family vacations. We had a few things where we did a lot of things all together. And my family is a little bit two generations. So I have two sisters that are in a batch, like 9 or 10 years older than me. And my brother and I are closer. We're 3 years apart in our current, we grew up in that close clump. So the family vacations where the older sisters and the younger brothers all got to do stuff together. So it was like all 6 of us. Those are the most memorable things from a family perspective. And then the other thing is that really shines through from my childhood is once I became, I got to like the later years of high school, and I finally figured out how to be cool, like in terms of having a bunch of friends and like, everyone's hanging around and high-fiving and staying up late and everything. And I was hosting a lot of like little parties. I remember the summer after 12th grade was kind of like the best year of my childhood. And so it was all about this tribal form of living where the other kids would just come over, smoke cigarettes, we'd stay up and drink beer and play cards and meet, there's like, that's how everybody started like dating and everything, because it was almost like a pub for young people, where it was unscheduled social stuff. There was a pool in my mom's backyard. So there was like swimming, and we were all acting like little adults. And we got to finally like, just be ourselves in an unscheduled environment. And I think that's influenced me to this day. I always try to recreate that summer after grade 12, my childhood, in the sense of like, let's bring a bunch of adults together and just make sure everybody's comfortable and they can all have fun and have campfires and have long discussions and just become really good friends. And I think that's like a tribal behavior for humans in the modern world. And it's nice. There's like not enough of that in US culture. It's way too much like we're either at work or we're on organized vacations, but we're not just hanging around in a group of 20 people very often. So that's partly why I'm here in Montana, is because I feel it's going to be a little bit like high school.
What's interesting to me, both of those are experiences that they didn't take a lot of expense or a lot of consumption. They needed a lot of time.
Yeah.
And a lot of freedom to just enjoy those. Which, knowing you now, there's a lot of parallel into your current lifestyle. How did you view kind of that saving and investing mindset as like the ability, like you said, in a sense, to recreate the best parts of your childhood, that freedom and that community?
That's super funny, because I didn't really think about it until right now, that might be sort of what I've been doing. But yeah, it's true. And I was really thinking, so the original motivation for retirement was parenthood. So Simi and I always wanted to be super good parents throughout, like before we were going to have kids, right? And we saw the coworkers, it was always like, oh yeah, I can't come into work because my kid is sick, or I can't take care of my kid because I have so much work to do. And there was all these conflicts. Yeah. So I always thought, well, by the time I have kids, I want to be free from mandatory work so I can be a super dad, because I always idolized that idea. Yeah. So, and that really did work out for the correct ways. Like by not having a job, I think we were able to be much less stressed out parents, and we were always able to put our child first, and it's still like that. But there was just absolutely no regrets about not having real jobs for this whole first 13 years of his life.
Oftentimes in our childhoods, our experiences with our parents are there's beautiful moments, and then there's things that we're like, wow, we'll probably do that differently. Were there any things that you really wanted to recreate? Any things that you just loved about your childhood or your family that you were like, if I could give that kind of gift to my kid?
And I think it has kind of happened. So I always had an unscheduled childhood where the only mandatory thing is school, and then you can do whatever you want. And of course, you're certainly welcome to join organized activities. But I'm not one of those parents who's saying like, you have to do violin lessons and you have to be in at least 2 sports and you need to build up your resume for Harvard and all this other stuff. It's just like, no way, man. Like having 8 hours a day of school is already such a big obligation for kids. Like they deserve the rest of the time off. And summers, like, just do whatever you want. So, except sometimes we did great long family vacations, which was nice, like month-long or 2-month-long trips. But I like the idea of kids running around free in a pack. Yeah. And then my neighborhood in Longmont, that really happens. So we built a nice house on a park. And so the backyard is basically this beautiful public park. And all the kids just came over and run around and play like Nerf games or water guns or Frisbee. And then they go, like the parents don't even know where the kids are. And that's and they come home when it's dinner time or when they're tired. And that's what my childhood was like. Like I remember these summers where you just run out in the morning with your friends and you play and you like catch frogs in the swamp and you play, ride bikes and end up swimming in the river. And then you come home and your parents are like, how was your day? And they don't even know. And then people say that doesn't happen anymore because it's all like organized and rich, and people are driving their kids around in armored Mercedes SUVs, like the Washington, D.C. lifestyle. Yeah. But it does still happen. It's still the 1950s if you pick the right neighborhood of the right city. And I feel like we did that right. And we chose to, the other parents in that neighborhood are the same way. They're all kind of just relaxed, we're wealthy enough to have comfortable way to live and not be stressed out. And it's like a low crime area. Yeah. But we're not so driven that we have to show off to each other and live in isolated, gated compounds.
Yes.
So it's been really, really great. And I think my son is having a great childhood. Like I have no regrets. I have lots of regrets in life. I've done a lot of things wrong, but in the parenting department, I feel like it's awesome.
And that's something that I love about this idea of being good with money. Some people resist the idea of being good with money because they don't want to be greedy, or they resist the idea of being good with money because they feel like it's deprivation. Yeah. And the reality is so different. if we can be good with money, it just enables us to, recreate the best parts of our childhood, live that kind of lifestyle that we're like, this is what made me happy. This was when I felt the most alive and the most myself. And the investing and saving, I love one of the terms that you use, like creating little green employees.
Yeah, I didn't invent that, but I have happily adopted it. So I'll just pretend it's mine. It's really good terminology though. Yeah, your dollar bills are little green employees that will stay with you for life, and they'll keep working for you as long as you keep them, just meaning that you have them invested doing something. And when you spend them, you're giving them away to be someone else's employees. So it's up to you, that balance that you want to do. But some people say like, you can't take it with you when you die, or like, what good is money if you don't spend it? But it's actually very good. It's very useful for you if you don't spend it. Yeah. Because then its second level effect, which is to provide passive income, is a very peaceful, peace-bringing thing. You don't need a lot of it, but to have some automatic income is very reassuring to you in life.
Yeah. So we've kind of started to hit on some of this, but one of the things that I think is the greatest benefit of building up some financial freedom, or when you finally cross that threshold of becoming financially independent, is you are able to custom design your life more. And it's not about, I think especially with like the FIRE movement, one of the greatest misconceptions I see is that it's about being able to opt out. And really, when you actually meet the people in the movement, they're doubling down on all the things that matter to them and on all the things that they love and that are important to them. It's not about even escaping as much as it is running towards things.
Yeah, you're opting in to awesomeness.
Yeah.
Or at least to things that are happy for you and good for your own mental health and stuff like that. Yeah.
And I've seen that you talked a little bit about in your family, how you've kind of created that ecosystem that matches, the best of your childhood and the things that you love. But you've also started to do that kind of in your local community. You've really leveraged this financial freedom to build, like you were saying, kind of the best of your high school experience.
Yeah. And share it with other people. Yeah.
How has that looked for you in Longmont? How have you recreated the best of high school? Oh yeah,
well I know that's just a leading question because you already know the answer, but yeah.
Every question is a leading question.
It's a good one though. So through this experience of being a blogger, I found I was meeting a lot of interesting people at events like this or just online. And it was really great people, but I noticed they all lived far away. In fact, I even built up a network of widely scattered friends, but we all have to travel far to see each other. And then I realized, well, why can't I do this with local people too? Because I live in a city of like 100,000 people. Surely there's lots of great people among that group too. So I tried to create a local gathering community and a space for us to gather in. So I bought a building along with some friends on the main street of our city. It's actually called Main Street. And just like kind of an old dilapidated property, but it's got a fair amount of interior space. It's like a historic old house with some patchy commercial building stuff on the front and nice yard out back. And anyway, we started a co-working space in that building and then just started letting it be known to the world, like using my Mr. Money Mustache stuff, like social media, like, hey, you can join the co-working space. And then you have a place to work and it's got all the usual amenities of a coffee shop plus more because it's like a FI-oriented stuff. So we help each other with businesses or renovations or tools or life advice. And there's like a gym out back. It's called the Prison Yard Gym. So like weight equipment, so you could work out in the 4 seasons like God intended. And a bunch of stuff like that. So we're trying to build it up and we host events there, things like, classes or live music or movie screenings or whatever. We watched the Playing with Fire documentary, which some people in our circle are very familiar. Aren't you in that movie? Oh, okay. Anyway, I'm surprised. You would be the perfect character, another perfect character in that movie, but before your time. So anyway, the first time that was shown was at the headquarters co-working space. So it's been fun and I've made a lot of new friends through it, and it's been around 2 years. And I think it's only going to keep getting better because we're really starting to hit our stride in terms of like people joining and the synergy of people being friends. And yeah, it's quite magical. And I would encourage any early retiree or not even retiree, anybody who wants a business that's fun and social, starting your own co-working space is a kind of a neat thing to do, as long as the real estate situation works out. Like you need a space that you buy or rent that's quite affordable, because we charge really low dues for our co-working space in order to make it more inclusive and less of a business feel. And that's really paid off because people can just join on a whim because of that. So yeah, hopefully that's a reasonable answer for starters. That's all. It's like a secret. You know, in the long run, I would like to create an entire city, you know, a town that would grow to become a city that has these principles like built into it from scratch. The whole idea of like an efficient, more people-centric form of life it's basically a car-free, walkable environment, mostly car-free, because I think your physical environment, in fact, affects how you live. And if you separate people with great distances and dangerous strips of like meat grinding asphalt with like, you know, cars whizzing around, that affects the entire social structure too, because they're isolated and they no longer bump into each other just in casual situations. And that affects your entire life. So I think the idea, you can make humanity better by having a better city. And in the United States, we're not doing that. We're still following this old recipe that nobody really thought out, and we're suffering because of it. So that's the big plan. But it's going to take some energy. I need someone like you to manage that project. Somebody who works 4 times harder than normal.
To build a city. Okay. We'll add this to my to-do list.
Yeah.
Build a city. I actually am obsessed with this idea because I love architecture and I love city planning. Because there is something about the way we relate in different spaces. We used to live in Germany, and we lived in Heidelberg, which is a very tight, compact, old town. And it's just, you can't really drive cars into it because they didn't create it for cars, and they didn't create it for parking.
So people tend to walk.
So you have to park outside and walk. And it created a different way of relating and a different lifestyle. And yeah, it was delightful. But I want to talk about in this theme of a progression and a spectrum of being good with money, because I think one of the ways we get caught up is thinking we'll have to be financially independent, and that's going to take like 10 years. So why even bother? Why even start like paying off my credit card debt, or why try to pay down my mortgage, or like, what's it going to matter if I invest $1,000? Like, but there's degrees of even just getting out of debt.
Yeah.
It's so empowering.
Yep. You're right. And that's to that extent, like when we use the word financial independence, it's not such a good thing because it scares people off who are too far away to see that. And really, we should just think about, what you're saying, good with money is a nice thing, because that's something that can happen overnight. Like you can suddenly be a little bit better with money. Every single choice you make can be a destructive choice or a productive one. Like, I'm going to buy this thing, or I'm not going to buy it, or I'm going to choose to pay this debt off, or I'm going to choose to add to my debt. Those are really small, easy decisions. And the benefits begin immediately. Like as soon as you make even one choice that improves your financial life, your life is better for the rest of your life. So you're building up a little series of like golden nuggets that start to make you less stressed. You know, you skip one, expensive happy hour that you can't afford, and you wake up better the next day in all these different ways. And you can just keep going with those things. And the people have often described, you get a lot of emails when you're in our position of being writers or whatever, or podcasters. People are saying my life is completely different because of these things. And they're very thankful, even though they're the ones who did all the work. But it's people really get transformed, and they end up a lot happier because of it.
Well, and even thinking about your co-working space to take it to the next level, like being good with money, it can kind of help transform your family. But then even in that community sense, you don't have to be financially independent to own a co-working space or to create a business or a thing that you love. If people are just a little bit better with money, be enough to get started. It's enough to get started. Yeah. One of the questions I'd love to ask myself and others, because I think one of the greatest benefits of being good with money is being able to say, like, what am I uniquely gifted to do? Like, what kind of impact can I make? Yeah. That not every other person has access to. And I see financial independence or financial freedom is just making it more possible and expanding it even more. Which is one of the reasons I love your build a town idea. That is something that I feel like you are uniquely capable of doing. Some parts of it, but there's other skills in that enterprise that I am missing. And that's why I haven't started yet, is because I'm very conscious, like I'm not willing to commit to a bunch of stuff that I'm not passionate about. Mm-hmm. So, but you're totally right. Getting better at money, being less stressed out, unleashes your talents so you can use them for whatever you want them to be. But it also doesn't make you all powerful and happy. You still have the same human flaws that everybody else has, but you just have more time to work on them and find your workarounds. Well, and I think what you were talking about in regards to kind of that high school experience and even the life you've created now is very tribal, and it is community. Yeah. And if it takes a village to raise a child, it probably takes a village to build a village. That's a lovely phrase. Yep, that's true. And I have collected quite a few people who say they want to work on the town. They want to create the town project. Yeah. And I feel like it really, we have everything we need to do it. Yeah. It's just a matter of being willing to commit our time, because I don't want to put in a half-assed effort to it. I'm like, if I say we're going to start a town, we have to do the town and persevere, not just be like, oh yeah, that was just something we started on Friday, but then we were tired on Saturday, so we didn't continue. Because it's going to be a multi-year effort, and there's going to be hassles. Like there'll be people who don't want you to do it. Yes. And everyone wants to stick with the status quo. So yeah, it's just something I'm really busy. Like this is on a very personal level, but I'm personally maxed out right now with being a dad and, trying to take care of myself as a person. And I know that if I try to split off my effort to work on creating a new city, I would not deal with it very well. I'd probably go a little bit insane, and I'm already a little bit insane. I don't need more of that. So that's why I haven't taken the steps to do it. But that's another thing that goes, it's really related to our talk right now, which is you get to choose that. You get to decide your projects and when you're ready for them. Yeah. And you can take years to plan stuff. And I'm already getting a lot of joy just thinking and planning about it right now. One of the things I actually really love about financial independence is that there's expiration dates on seasons, and they are so short. The time when our kids are little, it's a short season, and there's some things you can only do in that season. Yeah. And then it's gone. And financial independence for me just gives me the ability to lean in to every single season and to be fully present and to fully appreciate it, and just to kind of like suck the marrow out of that season of life, knowing that it's going to expire. Yeah. And you can let yourself off the hook for other stuff. Like I knew going into child raising that I was not going to be good at other stuff to my extent, because I was one of those somewhat driven people. Like when I was a software engineer, I wanted to be a really good one, no compromises. Like I would answer my email at 10 p.m. I would never, turn in junky work. I always wanted my work to be perfect and tested and beautiful. And then I thought, well, I want to be the same way as a dad. I don't want to be a half dad and half software engineer. So I did lean into all those, the baby stage and the toddler stage and all these different stages of child raising. And I have no regrets about it. And it was really hard. But the interesting thing is focusing on it also made it last longer. People always say, oh, pay attention when you're raising children because it just goes in the blinking of an eye. But that's totally not true. Like I have a 13-year-old. I've had him for like 35 years now in my mind, like because
that's been my, I've seen every little change and every little detail, and I haven't missed any of his childhood. I was never at work. I've never had to work while he was available. I work when he's in school. So it stretches out these seasons. So I think that's going to be good in the long run. As an old man, I'll look back and I'll be like, well, I only had that one kid, but at least I had him for 72 years by the time he got to age 20. So that was great.
Oh, that is so true. So growing up and figuring out how you're going to spend money in the world, you talk a lot about the joy of optimizing. When did you kind of lean into that, or what was that kind of inspiration point?
Yeah, I've gradually come to realize like as an adult that optimization, even though it sounds a little bit dorky when you use that word for it, it's really like the highest form of human art. Yeah. And it's one of the most beautiful things we do as a creature is figuring out how to do things in a smarter and smarter way and get more benefits. You think like the old fashioned example is how we would figure out how to use every part of nature and every part of animals we would, capture for food and like to become our housing and shelter and clothing and all that stuff. Like we're just so clever as a species when we're in our good, we're also incredibly dumb when we do. Sometimes we get into this herd behavior, but I love optimization. So every time I get a chance to do it, it makes me happy, even though it's also increasing my, my wealth, and it's making my spending go down. And one of the most fun times I discovered this is like as a pretty young adult. I had just graduated and I got a nice job, like my first engineering job in a city that was like 5 hours away. So I moved there and I wanted to have a beautiful place to live, and I wanted to have room for parties because I wanted this tribal environment and I wanted my friends around me, but I also wanted it to not be too expensive. So everybody's going around getting these apartments in sort of like the 1970s crappy apartment buildings because that's how you get cheap rent. But I went the opposite way and I looked for like the most expensive big luxury houses for rent, and hardly anybody could afford these places because they're all looking for cheap apartments. And then I gathered together with like 5 of my best friends from the graduating class, and my coworkers. So a bunch of like 20-something-year-old guys is what it worked out to. But together we would rent luxury houses in big neighborhood, big like premium neighborhoods in a great location, like near the Ottawa River. And so we would all have like gorgeous bedrooms and like a pool table in the living room. And like one of the houses we rented had like a full-on dance floor with like built-in sound system and lighting in the basement, because it was like this wealthy Indian family had developed it, and like they really liked to party. So we had like great living expenses or experiences, best neighborhood, and yet our rent was only like $300 or $400 per person because we're splitting, like this house was $2,000 to rent per month, but this is a long time ago. So think of it like $4,000 in today's dollars. Yeah. So pretty nice house. And so it was like optimized. It was win-win because we have the best house and the cheapest rent, and it's close enough to bike to everything because it's a rich neighborhood. So it's in the best location. And I always love to seek out those win-win situations where I'm saving money, but I'm having as much fun as possible too. And when you look around, there's ways to do that in almost every area of life, which is why I talk about bikes so much. Like bike is such a win over a car because everything is better about it. There's no compromises when you really think about it. And there's ways to do that with your food and with what to do with your leisure time, and even like how to exercise. You can have you can drive to a sweaty gym and wait in line for like a lame exercise bicycle and watch Fox News as you try to exercise. Or you can be like outside in a forest doing squats and like getting 10 times the benefit, like right in your backyard. Yeah. And it costs $0. And I just love that. I just keep doing it even now. And I get a lot of joy from it.
Yeah. One of my mottos is that frugal is best paired with easy and fun. So if something is also easy and fun, and it happens to save us money, that's like the perfect way for us to spend time and spend money. Yeah. Here in the Flathead Valley along the lake, they grow cherries, and they have like a you pick cherry orchards. So in the summer, we'll take all of the kids and we'll go down to the lake and we'll pick all of these cherries. They're like $1.25 a pound, and we'll spend a couple hours picking them, and then we'll go swim in the lake because my kids are covered in cherry mud from like eating pounds of cherries and then all of the dust. And
that must make some great photographs, like almost a zombie apocalypse movies
of
your kids.
It is. Yeah. But we go swimming, and it's easy and it's fun, and it happens to save us money. Like it happens to provide us like
cherries,
local cherries that we freeze. I use them all year in our oatmeal and pancakes.
Yeah. That's a really great example. And I'm sure everybody listening is like, oh, why didn't I think of that? Like that is great, but easy for you to say you live in Montana with the blah, blah, blah. But there's always opportunities like this, even if you live in like some, bleak, whatever stereotypical bleak state and suburb, there's like probably a beautiful park nearby that nobody uses, and you can have great traditions with your kids going to this park, or like there's an undiscovered river or beach or something near you. There's always a win, short distance from your house, and it's always going to be what your friends aren't doing. So that's probably the hardest thing, is your friends are always like, hey, we're taking the kids to the virtual reality arcade, and it's like $100 per family. You want to go? And I know I have a close friend who's going to be mad at me for using this example, but it just popped into my mind because, like, yes, it's fun and you should do that sometimes. But if you do that all the time, just because that's what you learned from your friends, you're not going to discover these magical cherry patch moments that are more fun and they're free. And those are the things that are going to get you ahead. To be honest, like the money part, it's going to make a huge difference in your wealth. Finding the fun, free things to do. And you really at some point, you really have to do less expensive stuff if you're going to get ahead with money. Cause like there's no way around the math. So you have to at least think about like, is this affordable for me in my life stage? And you don't have to compromise to do that, but you do have to at least be aware of it.
And I think that's the joy of optimizing. When you talk about what is the joy of optimizing, it's finding the things that maybe cost less money, but they add the richness and the meaning and the value to our life. Like that is the texture of what made for a great day or what made for a great week. And you can create this amazing life that just happens to also cost a lot less money. And happens to, because it's costing less money, it's growing our financial independence so we can just expand it even more.
Yeah.
It gives us more freedom and more options. Okay, so 2 retrospective questions. 1, if you had to, knowing what you know now, if you had to spend more money in one category over the last 10 years, what's something that you realize would have been worth the extra money?
That's a tricky one. I don't think I had any things that I spent too little money on, but I do think I worried about money too much. So there would often be times, like especially if we're on a vacation or something, and then something comes up that's, an unpleasant price. You're like, oh, I can't believe this is like $10 for this junky snack at the whatever, like the national park or something, when I could have this for $1 at the grocery store. So you get a little bit offended by, when you're used to being frugal, you get morally offended by things that are a ripoff. And now I realize that kind of stuff doesn't make any difference in your trajectory to freedom. Like it's $10 here or there, but you're not always on vacation. You're not doing it every day. So it's totally fine. So just changing my attitude towards these things and just enjoying it. Like, hey, look at that ripoff. I'm so glad I can afford $10 and it doesn't affect me at all. Ha ha ha. Here's the $10 silly like ripoff store. And then you walk away, enjoy it, and you just don't repeat it a lot, and then you'll be fine. And just learning to relax at that kind of stuff, I would have had more fun, because what I didn't realize is I've always been wealthy. Like as soon as I was 21 years old and I graduated with no debt from university, I was already richer than most of my peers because they were in the negative. And then I've always been positive since then, just slowly growing. So I've always been a rich person. I just didn't let myself feel that way until more recently. And then now it's been a lot more fun. And I don't spend more, but I just don't stress out. Like last night, we went as a speaker's dinner to the restaurant. And I mean, it wasn't an expensive restaurant even, but I just had a brief feeling. I'm like, hey, isn't it a nice feeling that no matter what happens here and what we order here, we can afford it? And I don't, the old me might have worried like, oh, I should have brought some nuts to eat in my room instead of going out to dinner. Like when I was 21 and I was just trying to scrape through on tuition money alone, I would have had those worries. And so, letting go of your worries earlier is a nice way to feel rich sooner.
Yeah. So this might tie into my next question is, were there any mindsets or ideas or perspectives that if you knew 10 years ago would have made the last 10 years more enjoyable or more fun?
I would have the same answer to that. Just worry less, and worry less about everything, like including interpersonal stuff. Yeah. If your relationships or friendships aren't going exactly the way you want, just like seeing the other person's perspective and realizing they're not against you. They're just trying their best based on their life experiences. And just learning to let go and enjoy people for what they are. It just helps release and save you from a lot of conflict. Yeah. And I think I'm an unusual person. So a lot of people aren't like me. So then that makes me feel like, oh, well, why aren't these people thinking the same way as me? They must be against me in some way, or, we can't be friends, or, and it's learning to realize that we're all different and you can celebrate that difference more. That's probably the big benefit I've gotten from like the last 10 years, just mellowing out. Yeah. So if you could learn, I don't know if you can do this because like it comes from experience, but if you're a young, high-strung person, imagine this future mellow version of you and what would they be like? Look at the Dalai Lama's way of living and just soak up that relaxed dude. He's so relaxed. And he's onto something there. I think that's what's, old mellow people are onto something, a good thing for the young people to learn.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Pete. Thank you for coming to Montana. Thank you for chatting and just being a really great inspiration, not just for what you're known for in the early retirement scene, but kind of showing us this real life example of what life can look like and what our impact can be once you're good with money.
Wow. Thanks, Jillian. That's quite a flattering outro. Yeah, and this is a really different conversation than most podcasts that I've ever been on, which is, I don't even go on them very often. So this is the most fun.
Woohoo! Most fun. It's because we're in Montana. That's it. Awesome.
And your first podcast ever.
And my very first one.
Mustache's most fun podcast.
Yeah.
I feel like this is a good sign.
That can be how you market it. You could be like, listen to the podcast that Mr. Money Mustache said most fun ever about. Right.
We will use that sound clip with a little video that will go on Instagram. That'll be just you saying that.